Hi everybody, this is Kevin and I'm on another Zoom chat, and today I'm chatting to my friend and osteopath, Martin Coleman. Hi Martin, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. It's my day off, so it's always good on a day off.
It would be a bit difficult to try and do a recording if you were working at the Haslemere Clinic.
Oh, we could pick and choose the patients.
Well, that'd be a good idea. That'd be an interesting one, actually. Perhaps we'll have to think about that. So, Martin, as I say in my Zoom chats, I like to try and find out about the person behind the name. And so, can you tell everybody that will be watching this where you were born and a little bit about your parents and your childhood, and then we'll go on a little bit further to your education.
Yeah. Just to warn you, my childhood's quite complicated.
Well, that's all right. We'll talk about a complicated childhood.
All right. So I was born 2nd of May 1964 in Portsmouth at I think it's Queen Mary's Hospital or St Mary's. I always get confused in Portsmouth. And I'm a twin, identical twin.
Right. Okay.
So my brother is left-handed. I'm right-handed. So I'm actually a mirror twin. So we could talk about that. So and to such a level that my hair grows the opposite way to his. So I'm quite genetically rare.
Yeah.
So my mother had 3 daughters already by another gentleman, and then he died sadly, and then she'd met my mother, and we came along. So she had 5 children. Mm-hmm. We were in inner city Portsmouth in a council house, living down there. Sadly, I'm not sad, but sadly, Mum died when we were 5.
Right.
And the family got split up. So I went to live with my father, and my elder sisters sort of went to their grandparents.
Right.
It's all lost in time. Why? Mm-hmm. And I was then sent to, with my brother, I was sent to a boarding school system, privately educated by the council and by charity. So I sort of left Portsmouth and went to live in Fareham. Mm-hmm. And I went to a pre-prep school when I was 5, and that normally upsets people to think I went to school at boarding school at the age of 5.
That's very young, actually, very young.
Yeah, very young. But as I always say to people, I had my twin brother, and they chose very good schools for us.
Well, that's great.
So
that's great. So
yeah, the schools were good.
Yeah. So how many years did you spend in boarding school?
I went from age of 5 to the age of 18.
Oh, crikey, 13 years, gosh.
Yeah, so I went to pre-prep school, East Acres, which is no longer there. Then I went to a school in West Meon called Westbury House, which was a prep school. And I was there from, I think, probably 70, I don't know, 69, so probably 70, 71 through to 77. And then I went to Lord Wandsworth College over in Odium, Long Sutton, until I was 18 and to 82.
Okay, and so from there, did you go into college or university?
Okay. I'll just add a bit more about the family because it's
okay. Yeah, please do.
Yeah. No, that's fine. So my real father died when I was 15.
Yeah.
And we were taken into the family of my headmaster of my prep school's family.
Oh right. Okay. Yeah.
So I have 2 families. I have the unique ability to run 2 families. So my brother and I were adopted into a family with 4 daughters. Mm-hmm. And we're not adopted with ward of court, which is slightly different. So we're legal guardians, but they are, for all intensive purposes, that was my family from the age of 15. But I then got back in touch with my original sisters, and I'm in touch with them, but they're 2 separate families.
Yeah.
So I run 2 families. So I have 7 sisters, and my twin brother, who's my proper brother.
Right. Okay. There's a lot of female content in that, Martin. It's a bit worried.
Oh no! Don't you worry. I went. My boarding schools are all boy boarding schools all the way through. So, but I think probably I've had a fair amount of female input.
Yeah.
Women don't scare me. I will entertain you with my career. So when I was 18, I took a year out from education, and I went and worked I spent 3 months in France looking after an epileptic boy. And I've stayed friends with that family, and I have like a French mother and father over in France that I interact with, who were late 70s, 80s. Then I spent 6 months at the Star and Garter home for disabled servicemen on Richmond Hill as a healthcare assistant.
Oh wow, yeah.
Which was brilliant. And then I went to America and did Camp America with disabled kids for 3 months in the summer of '83. And then I went with one of the nurses I trained with, Fiona, and we travelled and had fun. And then in September '83, I went to Bart's Hospital to do my nursing degree.
I was just about to say, when during our when you've been treating me with my old body was falling to bits, you were telling me that your osteopathy wasn't your first career, and you were actually a nurse.
I'm a nurse by training, and although my registration has fallen off because you have to do so many hours nursing to maintain your registration, I'm technically, I think I'm still a nurse, because I don't think once you're a nurse you don't stop being a nurse, and I, in a way, I consider looking after my patients osteopathically as nursing, because I'm just trying to make things better for people. So
absolutely. And how many years? How many years were you a nurse for?
Well, I did a unique. My degree was quite unique. We were so those people who will listen to this. So we were pre-Project 2000. So people who know about nursing will have heard of Project 2000. So nursing, when I started training, was the old model, and you trained as a nurse for 3 years, but there were some courses around the country that were sort of degree nursing. And so I was the 16th year of an intake at Bart's Hospital with City University. And my course was 4.5 years, a year intensive in the hospital at Bart's, and then 3 years mixing nursing with degree at City University doing psychology. And I always say to people, so when we did our training, I probably within a week of arriving at hospital, I was on the oncology ward as a first year student working full shifts. And that was quite scary at the age of 19.
Yeah, absolutely.
So dealing with, as I say, dealing with conditions I couldn't even pronounce.
Okay. So you made up a name, did you, for each one?
Yeah, you had to. Yeah, they were all chronic this and acute this and lymphoblastic this.
Yeah.
So and it was life at the sharp end. You saw it was quite sad. In those days, patients died all the time because the medicine was has come a long way in 30+ years. So I had an intensive year nursing. I think we had 2 weeks holiday in the year. And then in the September, I went to City University and to start my degree. And what's the other lovely fact? So my first year nursing in the nurses' home, I was on a floor with 59 women and me.
Martin, there's a definite theme with you with women.
So I was one of the girls. I'm definitely one of the girls. So and it was good fun. And I even used one of them. I even got one of them to bring me a cup of tea in the morning to wake me up. One of the nurses I trained with. So she's still a good friend. So, and we used to have complicated buttons on our tunics in those days, and they used to dress me in the lift on the way down to work, because it was so fiddly, the buttons. So one of the nurses would dress me as I went down. So just fond memory. So
there's this vision of you being dressed as you're going to work.
Yeah, no, very useful, very, very useful. But nursing in those days was great because you, as a student, you would just you spent 8 weeks on or 8 to 10 weeks on a ward, and you weren't extra numbers. You had your patients, and you just learnt as you went along, basically.
Yeah.
And it was what I call good nursing. Good nursing, and I loved it all.
Yeah, I think. Did you say to me that you ended up as an intensive care nurse?
Yeah. So after I did my degree, I don't know why I decided to do intensive care, but I headed into the Homerton Hospital in Hackney, and I ended up in intensive care for a year. I never did my E&B 100, which was in those days the intensive care course. I never always meant to, but I had a fairly busy year on that in Homerton Hospital, and I've worked in various hospitals. I've worked in most hospitals in London as an agency nurse as well. Because when you were a student nurse, you could work as an agency nurse, and they loved student nurses because they could pay them a healthcare assistant's wage, but get a more able person for the money. So I did a year's care, and then I decided then to go travelling with my girlfriend, who's now my wife, Mandy, and in January '89, headed off for a year and a half tour around the world.
Oh, right, okay. And what countries did you visit while you were doing that?
Oh, my travels, yes, lovely.
Yeah, let's talk about your travels, and then we go on to your osteopathy. That's the word.
Yeah, no, yeah. So we flew to India, to Delhi, and arrived. It was about January, I think, probably about January the 9th, 1989. First thing I did was lose my passport at the airport, which was very funny. Very clever. And the next morning, I left the passport basically in the place where we booked our first night's accommodation, and he turned up the next morning with my passport, and I was so pleased. I gave him, I think it was 50 rupees, which probably wasn't that much in those days, which probably was equivalent of a week's wages to an Indian.
Yeah.
He was very happy.
I bet he was, yeah.
I always remember that, losing your passport the first night you arrive. I've probably been in India half an hour. Marvellous. And then we explored Delhi, and then Delhi was so cold at night. It was so cold, even with blankets on. We hopped on a train and went down all the way to what was then Madras.
Right.
But I think it's called something else. I think it's, I should know the new names, but I think it's called, I have to look. I don't want to say, no, I can't remember.
I wouldn't have a clue. I know where India is. It's down there somewhere, but
yeah. Well, the Indian trains are great, and the Indians were very friendly, and they loved the English. Whether they still do is another matter, but they loved the English. They had great respect for us, and they loved talking to you, and they particularly loved talking cricket.
Oh,
so if you go to India, brush up on
why that is.
They love cricket, so they talk cricket to the cows come home.
I bet.
And Indian trains are amazing.
Yeah,
Indian trains, as they probably still are. People live. They're born on an Indian railway station. They live on an Indian railway station. They die on an Indian railway station. It is something. It is quite amazing. And the trains are packed. And this was 30 years ago. I'm sure they still are. And the people selling their goods literally flip from carriage to carriage, sort of through the. There's no connecting corridor. So in those days they would just flip from one door to the other, and they come in selling their coffee or cakes or whatever.
It's incredible, isn't it, to think that's, and as you say, I've seen films on TV, not that many months ago in India, and they're sitting on top of sort of roofs and everything on the trains.
I've seen all that. I've travelled on top of a train's roof once. That was quite exciting.
I was just about to say, I can imagine you sitting up on the top of the train.
It was great, and that wasn't it. That was in South America. That's another time. But the train actually came off the rail, so we all had to get off. But it didn't not dramatically. It was obviously a common occurrence. But I'll tell you about that when we went to South America. But that was very funny, sitting on top of the train and the train coming off the rail, and we all have to get off. So the train was a bit angle. But anyway, sorry, back to India. So travelled around India, loved India. It's intense. They're quite nice, the Indians. They overwhelm you a bit, and you've got to be able to deal with the poverty. And I suspect that hasn't changed.
Yeah. You often hear of the poverty that there is still in places like India.
Oh, it's extraordinary.
Yeah.
And
sorry, go on.
I was going to say, in those days, if you were wealthy, you were fat. So being quite a skinny person at that age, at 20, I was 23 then, they probably thought you were very poor because you weren't a fat person, because being able to eat obviously was a sign of wealth.
Yeah.
So I remember all the film posters, let's just go back 30 years, were hand painted. And I remember there was a Bond movie, and Bond was painted very chunkily.
Oh.
Because it was obviously to show that he was a, successful, fit, good man. I mean, as I say, these were hand painted posters in those days.
Yeah.
So I can tell you stories about India that we went to the cinema and we paid for the upstairs bit. It was very, very faded glory. And then all the Indians around us were sort of hoiking and then just spitting on the carpet throughout the film. Oh, it's quite unpleasant. So the carpet was like old, shiny with spit in it. But you could see it was obviously a very grand cinema once.
Yeah, yeah. Sounds lovely.
Yeah. But India was amazing. And you end up eating, basically the secret of traveling is to eat where the locals eat and the places that are busy. And then you're unlikely to get food poisoning.
Yeah.
So I got ill in India after a month in Goa at a fish restaurant, and it was too quiet afterwards. I was thinking at the time we should have gone somewhere which was busy, because then obviously then everything's turned over.
Yeah.
So always a good tip for traveling, if you eat somewhere that the locals are at and that's busy, not anywhere empty.
Yeah, yeah. Because you're sitting on your bed, you're sliding down slightly, Mark.
Sorry, I could fall asleep. I love my bed.
I'm just watching you gradually going down. I think he's going to fall asleep in a minute.
I'm quite happy to fall asleep. I like an afternoon nap. I think it's good for you.
Well, yeah. I'll take your word for it. So
back to India. Hill stations, amazing. Honestly, the stuff we saw was amazing.
Yeah.
We went up to. I'm getting old now. We went out into the Thar Desert up in Rajasthan. That's the word I wanted. And we did a 4-day camel trip. Sat on a camel for 4 days, riding out in the desert between India and Pakistan and sleeping under the stars. That was quite interesting. You get incredibly sore sitting on a camel for hours on end because they have a lolloping action.
Yeah, I've seen them on TV, and it's something I've never sort of really thought I'd like to do that. But no.
It's interesting. Yeah. And the man wouldn't let me have stirrups because he said I was rubbing the hair on the camel's neck with my feet, so my feet were just dangling. That's very funny.
I'd slide off.
Oh yeah, you had a pommel to hang on to.
Oh right, okay.
So, the Rajasthan was brilliant. That was good. And then from there we went back to Delhi, and then we went to see the Taj Mahal, which was amazing. That's well recommended, Taj Mahal. And we went to Varanasi, and that was amazing. And where they all sort of swim in the Ganges.
Oh right, yeah.
And you can see all the funeral piles. They burn all the bodies on the banks of the river and then tip the remains. So what they're drinking water that's got bits of body floating in it. As you went out on a boat, you could see bits of. I saw a torso floating by. And the bloke said to me, "This is the best water in the world. Would I like some?" I said, "No, thank you."
Yeah, the best water in the world to avoid.
But he was drinking it and gargling it. He said, "Oh marvelous."
No! Oh my God!
Yeah, unbelievable.
Yeah.
And then from there we went overland to Kathmandu, to Nepal.
Oh right, okay, yeah.
It was brilliant, and we had 6 weeks in Nepal, and we went over to Pokhara by bus, and then we went walking for 10 days, I suppose, up in the mountains.
Wow.
Unprepared, I might add. We had what do we have? We had one pair of gloves between us.
Oh, right.
It's all right. You can hold hands with a gloved hand and keep the other hand in your pocket.
Yeah.
And I had some dodgy shoes. Sense. We had dodgy trainers. It's terrible when you look.
Perfect for mountaineering then.
Perfect for mountaineering. And when I look back, very stupid. But anyway, we survived. So I think on about day 3, we were in the snow line, literally pulling ourselves from tree to tree. And it was about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, getting dark, and thinking we're going to die. We didn't even have winter coats on. And then we found a path, and that led to a little hut, and there was a man there, and we paid our £1.10 for the night and got our supper and a bed for the night in a little hut.
Sounds like you were lucky to find that hut by the sounds of it.
We were very lucky. So when I tell my children not to do stupid things, I've done. So, and anyway, we had a lovely time trekking. We went to a place called Annapurna, which is Machu Picchu was the not Machu Picchu. I can't remember the Nepalese name for it. Fishtail Mountain.
Mm-hmm.
But we went up, and there were people with mountain sickness, which was quite interesting.
Yeah, yeah.
And of course, you don't know if that's going to affect you or not. But we were fine. Mm. What else was funny about that? Oh, we stopped at a place called Chomrong, and there was an old Nepalese sergeant, and we hired off him snow jackets and thick sleeping bags for $50. My emergency $50, and that saved us. So, but they're very trusting, because I could have kept the coat and the sleeping bag, but obviously on the way back, when we came back a few days later, we dropped the stuff off again.
Yeah. Wasn't it one of these you pay a deposit and then you get the deposit back on the way back?
No, he's very trusting. He was ex British Army, Gurkha.
Yeah.
I think it was called Captain's Lodge, but I don't think he was a captain.
No.